So what happens when YouTube runs out? Well, I guess this is a very logical question to ask, which honestly I've asked myself, and actually I asked myself this many years ago. It was probably about 6 years ago, and at the time I had a mentor, and the answer that was provided to that question made the most sense out of any question that I've ever had answered before. And it was a very simple answer, but I would be willing to bet that right now a lot of content creators, YouTubers, or Twitch streamers, or TikTokers, or Instagram influencers are all wondering the same thing. And it really doesn't just come down to YouTube. It really comes down to any career path that you choose that you're ultimately deriving most, if not all, of your income from, which then we can get on to the tangent and the topic of discussion and conversation of multiplying and diversifying your income. But for most people, their income source comes from one primary place: their job, their employer, whatever company they work for, or whatever business they run, or whatever it is they do. Whereas, for instance, let's just say I actually came across a creator on YouTube, and he has various construction companies and businesses that he runs, which is good. Odds are he's probably pulling in a substantial amount of money on a regular basis, very respectable income. However, he started creating content on TikTok and YouTube, and now he has diversified and multiplied his income. So if someone were to approach him and ask him the same question of, well, what happens when, your construction business dries up, or there's a recession, or there's a supply chain issue, or there's shortages, or, the interest rates are too high and nobody wants to spend any money, or there's a depression, or there's, World War III or nuclear attack or anything like that, then his answer would inevitably be different than most, whereas his answer would more than likely be, well, it's not my primary source of income. So, I can supplement from my other diverse stream of income. And more than likely, by having that diverse stream of income at the same time of having the construction company, all that extra money that's coming in is more than likely being saved and ultimately invested. That investment, or those investments, would then produce dividends and passive income and streams above and beyond. And it's a cycle of compounded interest, basically. Somebody actually asked me, well, the banks are taking a huge risk by loaning money because of the effects of inflation and the uncertainty of the future. Now, granted, if anyone were going to have some sort of idea of what's going to happen in the future, I think the big banks, the JP Morgan Chases of the world, the Bank of Americas of the world, the Goldman Sachs of the world, the big banks, not the ones that have collapsed, but the ones that are still operational. Those folks, the CEOs, the people making $20-30 million a year, probably have some sort of idea and indication of what's happening, what's coming down the pipeline before any of us ever will. So the banks, in essence, ultimately are using basic investing principles and strategies of dollar cost averaging, and when they can get the most in return from interest rates on the money they loan out, they will. And when rates dip and the federal funds rate and the prime rate drops and interest rates are lower, then they won't. And they'll exercise and deploy different vehicles and strategies and business strategies that the bank can use to then drum up additional resources and deposits and revenues, ultimately in profit. But it just comes down to basic dollar cost averaging. And I think that's kind of the case with YouTube. So YouTube is going to be similar to a commission-based, performance-based, non-set salary hourly job, basically, or career, or whatever you want to call it. And in essence, you don't know how much you're going to make or if you're going to make anything, or if you're going to make a lot ever. You don't until you do. And a lot of that will be based on your performance and your drive and, your initiative and your prowess and your presence of mind and, your determination and your tenacity, all the strong and, characteristics that basically are inherent in successful people. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Good book. You should read it. So basically, you just don't know. And granted, maybe one month you don't make any money, and the next month you break even, and then the month after that you don't make any money, and then the month after that, you light a fire, and everything that you've been working for has culminated to this massive payday, and there you go, and you could pay for your entire year in 1 month. Now, what you do with that money from that point on is going to be the determining factor on, what happens in the future. But I mean, really and truly, you got to look at it as like car sales. Maybe 1 month you're on fire and you just absolutely destroy it. Real estate, same thing, closing left and right, closing huge properties, making great commission. And if you work for a company like eXp Realty, then you're also going to be seeing dividends coming towards you from the real estate agents and professionals that you have, built into your network. So if you guys want to know more about that and have a discussion on that, then by all means, let me know. Drop a comment down below. But at the end of the day, in these types of roles, you just don't know. But even still, if we were to look at it from a traditional role of employment, working for Walmart or McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or anywhere that you clock in, day out, you clock in, you get a paycheck once a week, twice every 2 weeks. You also don't know how much you're going to make, because maybe 1 week you get 40 hours, maybe another week you don't. Maybe 1 week you get 50 hours and you get a little bit of overtime, and another week you don't. No different than being in the service-based industry as a server or a bartender or anybody who relies on primarily a majority of their income to come from tips. You just don't know. It's plain and simple. Now, the exception would be those who are on a salary, and your income is pretty much a set wage no matter what. It is what it is. Now, if you are fortunate enough, maybe you're on a salary base plus compensation package where you'll earn a salary and have the potential upside of a bonus and commission and extras and add-ons and perks and stock options and, all sorts of additional extras. But for the most part, that's pretty much the only industry where you're going to be guaranteed to know how much you're going to make. But even still, the question still remains. What happens when it runs out? There has literally been nothing in existence so far yet, except for one thing. And if you know what this one thing is, drop a comment down below. I'd love to know if we're on the same page here. But there's literally been nothing in existence that has lasted forever, except for one thing. Technically one. So if you know what that is, drop a comment. But nothing is guaranteed. Nothing lasts forever. Everything has a life cycle, a half-life, a finite point in time where everything has been exhausted and it is no more. And that is no different than any form of employment or income that you produce and you generate and you receive. It could end at any point in time. Now, this is not by any means me trying to bum you out or get you down about your job or your paycheck or your income or your YouTube channel or anything like that. I'm just trying to keep it real and just talk to you guys how I would talk to anybody and how I approached the conversation in question with my mentor about 6 years ago. And the simple fact of the matter is that nobody knows anything. But I will say that the folks out there who, no matter what, every single day, day in, day out, give it 100% or more, 110%, even though that's not really possible. Those folks that continuously push and drive and fight through adversity and complications and setbacks and, clear hurdles and, every possible cliche of, any classic motivational poster that you could think of. Those are the folks who are going to figure it out. They're the ones who are going to make it. And maybe one year they kill it. Maybe the next year they don't. Then they build back up. Next year they kill it. And the year after that, they just destroy it. And then, these are cycles. It's all cyclical. No one here has a crystal ball. No one is in full control or complete control. And like I told you guys last year, sometimes your interruption in your income is by no fault of your own. So you got to think. So, let's just say you're in a career that's recession proof, although we know that's not necessarily true, because we can look at the healthcare system and hospitals and doctors and nurses and RNs and, everybody that's associated, ambulance drivers, EMTs, EMS, all that, helicopter pilots. G.I. Justin, I think he was actually a helicopter pilot for EMS in Tennessee. But at the end of the day, you just never know. And even in that industry, hospitals go bankrupt. Funding dries up. Patients don't pay. Insurance is too slow to pay, which we know insurance is an issue right now when it comes to homeowners insurance and flood insurance and fire and casualty and different things like that. But, health insurance is another issue too. And there is a liquidity crisis. There is an insolvency nightmare situation going on right now that is affecting everybody across the board some way and somehow. However, maybe an industry and a career path like health and medical, unless you work for Pfizer, maybe then you can continuously write, blank checks, turn the money printer on whenever you want. But even if you're a anesthesiologist, okay, because honestly, I was looking up yesterday or day before, anesthesiologists here in my hyper local area are starting at around $300,000 a year. And there's no shortage of people needing to be put under for whatever possible medical procedure it could be. However, if you're an anesthesiologist and by some unfortunate accident you are unable to go to work, whether it's a car accident or some sort of injury at the gym or, traveling and, something crazy, just unheard of happens to you by chance, your career is still a great career path. It still earns a ton of money, but you're unable to go. So then the question still remains. So what happens when anesthesiology dries up? Or what happens when the money from anesthesiology dries up? It's all the same. Now, granted, YouTube kind of gets this special connotation because of the nature of content creation and the allure of being a YouTuber and living this lavish and luxurious lifestyle, which, again, this video may only end up being 20 minutes long. But when it comes to YouTube, when it comes to reality TV, when it comes to movies, when it comes to even the news, when it comes to people out in public, you never really know anything except for what they want you to see. And that's also then based on your assumption and your judgment of what you have seen and witnessed. There's always three sides to every story: your side, their side, and the truth. And there are countless instances where we can say, well, we thought that, such and such was doing really well, or we thought such and such was, not doing so hot. And then, them on the other end saying, no, everything's fine, everything's good and great. But the truth is, no, neither one of us, we were wrong, they were lying. And the truth is, here's exactly what the problem was once it becomes revealed. But none of that really has any bearing whatsoever on us. And I think what's most important here is about us, you, me, whomever, when it comes down to looking at and, trying to ascertain the likelihood of being prepared and ready for whatever may come your way. And the simple fact of the matter is that right now, YouTube is a little odd, a little strange, but so is pretty much all of the job market. And depending on certain industries and locations and, your level of education and experience, this, that, and the other, it will vary for you. But there's no certainty with anything. There's no certainty with YouTube. There's no certainty with any career. There's no certainty with the stock market. There's no certainty with the real estate and housing market. The only certainty is that there will continuously be uncertainty and a never ending sea of unknown unknowns that again, no one has a crystal ball. No one knows the future. No one knows what's going to happen. And even if they did, by knowing that, it would more than likely alter the future, which would then change the reality altogether, create this wrinkle in time and warp effect. You guys know how these time travel movies work. You can't do that. That's just how it works. But it comes down to something very, very simple. And something that, is easy to understand is how it was explained to me many years ago. And that was that you have skills. You have a skill set. You are a smart, intelligent, driven person who is extremely motivated and ultimately will win and succeed at any and all cost. Therefore, as you begin to take this leap and, walk away from your career of nearly a decade plus and go out on your own and venture out on your own to be a successful business owner, self-employed entrepreneur on the right-hand side of the cash flow quadrant, if you decide this is not the life for you, you can go back and do what you were doing, or you can go and find something else to do, and you will be perfectly fine because you exude confidence and are the essence of the most admirable characteristic human traits that ultimately create leaders, create successful people, create winners, plain and simple. And if that job you left isn't there, you'll go find a different job. And if a same job that you had somewhere else isn't really there, what you want to do, you'll find a new job and you will make it work. You will succeed, you will excel, and everything will be just fine. Now, here's the special part of it all. Here's the kicker. No matter what it is, no matter what you do, and along the way, no matter how little you make or how much you make, the key is going to be setting yourself up financially no matter what, so that even if you had a bump in the road, or what if YouTube dried up, or whatever it may be, whatever the question, whatever the possible, devastating outcome and interruption to your income and your budget and your savings and your livelihood could be, it doesn't matter so much, because you're saying to yourself, well, I've got plenty of time. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not, struggling to get by. I'm not broke. I didn't live above and beyond my means. And so I'll figure it out. I'll go and explore certain options and, talk to different people, maybe even, go to school and pick up a new certification or a new skill or a new trade or a new license based on the demand and the need at the market, which I talked to you guys a little bit about that the other day. And cybersecurity right now is looking pretty damn enticing. So, talk about a possible near recession-proof industry as we're moving more and more towards this digital era and this digital age of AI and automation and, this idea that computers will, have thoughts and the mind of their own, and, how that could have an impact on us from a safety standpoint as a military defense for a country, as I live in an area where I'm surrounded by military bases and, these companies that have contracts with military different branches of government and the military. It's almost like a no-brainer. Now, granted, with that, there would be some guidelines that you'd have to follow, which may include me no longer creating YouTube videos from a security standpoint, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But that's pretty much it. What happens when YouTube dries up? Well, I don't know. I guess the same thing that would happen when anything else dried up. What happens when being a bus driver dries up? What happens when being a trash collector dries up? What happens when being a housekeeper dries up? What happens when being a school teacher dries up, even though school teachers don't make very much to begin with? What happens when being a police officer dries up? What happens when being a train conductor and engineer dries up? What happens when being a personal trainer at a gym dries up? Any possible career that you could think of. What happens when being a server dries up, or a district manager for anything dries up? The same answer and rules will apply. I appreciate you guys watching. Please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop your comment down below, and I will see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.